Haunted beginnings. The echo of the past. It began on a night when even the moon seemed to hold its breath. A night when the silence of the forest was shattered by a single, ominous snap of a branch. I stood frozen, every nerve on high, alert, as if the sound had been designed to pierce the veil of my hidden past. My grip on the dagger tightened instinctively, and my heart pounded as though it were trying to escape the confines of my chest. In that fleeting moment, I knew that survival was about more than just blending into the shadows. It was about confronting the echoes of a life I had desperately tried to leave behind. The chill of the night air wrapped around me like a shroud, carrying with it the faint familiar scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. I pressed myself harder against the ancient bark of a towering tree, my mind racing with memories of secrets and betrayals. Every rustle of the wind seemed to whisper forbidden truths, each gust a reminder that my past was never truly far behind. I dared not breathe too deeply, for even the softest exhale threatened to betray my presence to the lurking predators of the darkness. In the distance, a low, guttural laugh cut through the silence, a sound as ragged and unpredictable as the memories that haunted me. Soon, the unmistakable crunch of boots on frosted leaves followed, each measured step echoing like a death knell in my ears. Was it merely the call of the wild? Or was it something far more sinister, a reminder that those I once trusted now regarded me as a traitor, a ghost doomed to wander the edge of the pack? The very mention of Moonfang stirred an ache deep within me, as if the name were a curse etched into the fabric of my soul. I dared to shift my position, inching silently toward the tree line, my eyes straining to penetrate the inky darkness that concealed more than just the night's chill. There, amidst the wavering shadows, 3 figures emerged, silhouettes as sharp and dangerous as the claws of a predator. Their presence ignited a spark of foreboding that raced through my veins, merging with the adrenaline that already pulsed in my limbs. A growl, low and menacing, reverberated among the trees, followed by snippets of coarse, grating voices that sent a cold shiver down my spine. Their words were lost in the night, yet each syllable carried an unyielding promise of impending doom. For a moment, I wondered if my life's choices had led me to this very confrontation. There was no mistaking it. These weren't mere wanderers of the wilderness, but foes with a calculated vendetta. They believed that I, a shadow of my former self, was an anomaly, a liability that must be eradicated before the pack could stand. United once more. My heart twisted painfully as I recalled the loyalty I had once been afforded, and the warmth of acceptance now tainted by suspicion. In that instant, the forest ceased to be a refuge. It became a battleground where my every secret, every scar would be laid bare. I stood immobile, caught between the urge to vanish entirely into the darkness and the fierce, unyielding need to confront the past that had been chasing me relentlessly. The memory of failed alliances, shattered promises, and whispered betrayals surged within me. Yet, in the midst of that relentless internal storm, a spark of determination glowed quietly, a promise to protect what little remained of my honor, even as the accusers gathered around. The forest, with its intricate tapestry of shadow and light, served as both my shelter and my confessor. Each snap of a twig, each whispering breeze against the leaves, resonated with the deep loneliness of a soul haunted by regrets. I could almost hear the heartbeat of the night, a rhythmic pulse that echoed the slow, measured steps of fate drawing near. It was as if nature itself conspired to remind me that no matter how far I ran, there were forces beyond my control that would one day force me to stand and answer for my past. Then, in one heart-stopping moment, the distant echoes faded into silence. The 3 figures, like phantoms in the mist, melted away back into the forest's embrace, leaving me in a solitude so profound it bordered on despair. I exhaled slowly, a shudder passing through my body as I pressed my back against the cold, rough bark of the tree. The night air, though biting and unforgiving, carried with it a strange promise, a promise that the secrets of the past could be faced, if only I dared to step forward. That is when I realized that this was more than just another night in the wilderness. It was the threshold of a reckoning. The unyielding darkness around me was not only a reminder of my isolation, but also a canvas upon which my fate was about to be redrawn. With trembling resolve, I allowed my mind to settle, listening intently to the quiet murmur of the forest and the distant memory of laughter that both taunted and beckoned me. I was no longer simply surviving. I was preparing to confront the profound truth that had haunted me for so long. In this haunted beginning, as I stood alone amid the whispering trees and the echo of my relentless past, I sensed that every choice, every misstep, and every glimmer of hope had led me to this decisive moment. The night was filled with a promise, and though my heart pounded in fear, it also beat with an undeniable, defiant determination. I was ready to face the unknown, to challenge the betrayal that had molded me, and to reclaim the honor I had thought forever lost. Shadows and silhouettes. An unwelcome encounter. In the deepening gloom of the forest, every sound seemed amplified, a symphony of creaks, rustles, and whispers that heightened my alertness and quickened my pulse. I had barely managed to steady my breath after the terrifying echoes of my past when an almost imperceptible shift in the air caught my attention. Slowly, deliberately, I eased my form away from the comforting anonymity of the tree's bark, careful not to disturb the silence that was now both my guardian and my enemy. There, amid the wavering darkness illuminated solely by the slender beams of moonlight, I saw them. 3 figures emerged as if carved from the very shadows they inhabited. Their silhouettes were unnervingly sharp against the dim canvas of night, a silent prologue to the threat they embodied. Each movement of these mysterious shapes was calculated and predatory, reminding me all too painfully of the rogues who had once broken my trust and shattered the fragile remnants of my past. My hand instinctively tightened around the hilt of my dagger, its worn leather grip a fleeting comfort against the onslaught of panic. I could feel the cool metal press against my palm, an anchor in an ocean of uncertainty. Every inch of my body screamed to retreat further into the safety of obscurity, yet the pull of my own turbulent history held me frozen in place. The name, Moonfang, echoed in my mind, a bitter reminder of promises lost and bonds betrayed. It was more than a territory. It was a ghost that haunted every step I took. As I studied their approach, the figures drew closer with an eerie, unnatural fluidity. Their steps, silent and purposeful, broke the fragile stillness of the woods. I could almost see the cold glint in their eyes as they scanned the darkness, seeking the slightest sign of vulnerability. Each of them was draped in the guise of predators, a living embodiment of menace that sent a visceral chill down my spine. The interplay of moonlight and shadow played over their faces, revealing nothing, yet suggesting everything: suspicion, hostility, and a thirst for retribution. I could feel the weight of each passing second as my mind churned with memories of former alliances and countless betrayals. In that quiet moment of internal agony and desperation, a storm of thoughts whipped through. Me. Had I truly become the traitor they believed? Was the past I had longed to escape now out for a reckoning? The uncertainty gnawed at me, threatening to swallow any remaining shard of resolve. And then, there was the unspoken promise in the air, an unyielding threat that the pack would not allow an enemy, especially one marked by the name Moonfang, to roam unchallenged within their domain. A sudden pause, a brittle silence that stretched between heartbeats, allowed the weight of the encounter to settle in. In that fleeting moment, my senses were laid bare. The soft crunch of dry leaves underfoot, the distant sigh of wind through the treetops, and the uneven rhythm of my own racing heart. I could almost hear my breath, shallow and rapid, as though every inhalation might betray my location. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable collision of destinies. Then, one of the figures moved with a predatory grace that nearly blurred the line between shadow and substance. I could discern the barely perceptible glint of determination in that figure's stance, an almost tangible resolve that contrasted starkly with my own trembling uncertainty. It was clear now. These rogues were not here by accident. They had come with purpose, with the cold precision of hunters stalking their prey, and their intention was as clear as the silent threat in every purposeful step they took. My mind raced with a mixture of revulsion and grim acceptance. I knew that beneath their menacing exterior lay an unyielding chain of grudges, a promise of retribution that had been meticulously woven over time. The mere mention of Moonfang ignited the embers of an old, simmering wound, making every movement of these figures a stark reminder of the cost of my past transgressions. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and yet unexpectedly resolute, an awareness that clashed violently with the terror surging within me. As the distance between us diminished, the predatory figures began to converge like dark clouds gathering before a storm. My senses sharpened to an almost unbearable acuity. I felt every heartbeat as it pounded in my ears, every breath as it mingled with the crisp nocturnal air. In that pregnant pause between threat and escape, my internal monologue churned relentlessly. I wondered, with a bitter twist of fate, if perhaps I had reached the point where the past was inescapable, a specter that would not simply vanish into the night. Instead, it demanded to be confronted. I stood rooted there, a solitary figure, cloaked in fear and defiance, as the figures advanced with an unspoken promise of danger and retribution. In that charged silence, time seemed to slow. Every second stretched long enough for me to register the depth of my isolation, the solitude that had defined my exiled existence. And yet, it was also in that moment of paralyzing terror that a small, steady ember of resolve flickered to life within me. I realized that despite the insidious threat and the overwhelming sense of betrayal, I had no choice but to face them, no matter the cost. The night watched silently as the three mysterious silhouettes drew ever closer, their intent as ominous as the inevitable judgment they carried, and deep within me, the lines between fear and determination blurred. For in that moment, I knew that survival depended not only on retreat, but on the courage to confront the unknown. The forest, draped in shifting shadows and pierced by the moon's pale light, held its breath, awaiting the next move in this silent, deadly encounter. A rift of betrayal, the weighing of loyalties. In the heavy silence that followed the rogue's eerie departure, I felt the weight of every whispered accusation and every fractured promise settle upon me like a shroud. As the echoes of their malevolent voices began to fade into the murmur of the forest, fragments of conversation, snatches of plans, names, and sinister intentions reached my ears. It was as if the very night had conspired to reveal the secret ledger of my past transgressions, each word a reminder of the blood spilled and bonds broken. I listened intently, straining against the pounding of my own heart, which roared in my ears like distant thunder. Through the hushed rustle of the leaves, I caught the faint murmur of one of the rogues, speaking in a tone that was both detached and dripping with malice. They spoke of Caleb and Arya, names that had once been my sanctuary, and now had become bitter weapons pointed directly at me. Their voices painted a vivid picture of a fractured pack, one whose unity had been shattered by the traitor I had become, a stain on the legacy of Moonfang. Every syllable was like a blade twisting in an open wound, the cold, hard truth slashing through years of self-deception. I could almost feel their disdain, their anger radiating from the dark corners of the forest, as if I were the sole architect of a betrayal that had left the pack bleeding and broken. The words, betrayer, traitor, deserter, echoed relentlessly in my mind, each one carving deeper into the guilt that had long festered within me. It wasn't merely the weight of these labels, but the profound realization that my actions had not only severed ties with those I once held dear, but had also left indelible scars on my own soul. A wave of anger and sorrow crashed over me in that moment, the raw emotions mingling until they felt indistinguishable. The hurt was visceral, a burning, inescapable sensation that surged through my veins, reminding me of every time I had turned my back on trust and loyalty. The memories came unbidden, warm smiles now frozen in time, shared moments of camaraderie that had once lit up the darkest nights. And yet, with every memory, the sting of betrayal grew sharper, more defined, a relentless specter haunting me even in the solitude of these cursed woods. I felt the rhythmic cadence of my heartbeat dictating the pace of my thoughts. In the depths of that internal storm, I realized that this moment was a reckoning, a point where every misstep, every whispered lie, and act of self-preservation had culminated in an unavoidable truth. The inevitability of facing the consequences of my past loomed large like an approaching tempest. And though terror mingled with regret, a fierce determination began to swell within me. I knew I could not hide forever in the dark recesses of my guilt. I had to step forward, however trembling my resolve might be, to confront the very essence of my own undoing. Within me, conflict raged like an inferno. Anger at myself warred with the desperate need for redemption, a need to reclaim the honor that had once been my compass. The notion of retribution, though terrifying, carried an unexpected allure. It was as if, by facing the relentless truth of my betrayal, I could finally make sense of the fractured pieces that made up my soul. That possibility, though fraught with risk, fueled a quiet, yet unwavering resolve. I understood, with a clarity that cut through my inner tumult, that true freedom could only be achieved by acknowledging the weight of my past, regardless of the pain it stirred. As I stood there, shrouded in the ghostly silver light of the moon and the heavy scent of damp earth, the forest around me seemed to whisper secrets of its own, a reminder that nature, in its relentless rhythm, forgives only those who confront their transgressions. The murmurs of the trees and the soft rustle of the night wind carried with them an unspoken promise that every broken bond might, in time, be mended if one dared to face the consequences head-on. In that charged silence, I could feel the pull of destiny, a magnetic force drawing me away from my well-worn retreat into the unknown. I realized that no matter how much I craved the solace of the shadows, the time had come to step into the harsh light of accountability. The chill of the night, once a comfort as it cloaked my escape, now stung like the icy touch of an old friend, reminding me of a debt long overdue. I took a slow, deliberate breath, feeling as if the entire forest had paused alongside me. Every element of the night, the cold, the dark, the very air I inhaled, served as a silent admonition to embrace what was inevitable. I braced myself as I lifted my gaze to the canopy above, where faint stars struggled to pierce through the veil of darkness. In that moment, the path before me was unmistakable. I must emerge from the sanctum of my seclusion and confront the parts of myself that had once betrayed not only the trust of those I loved, but also the sanctity of my own spirit. The voice of the rogues, though distant and fading, had ignited something profound within me, a roaring confluence of regret, anger, and a resolute promise that, despite the scarred past, I was determined to carve out a future in which I would no longer be defined solely by betrayal. Stepping away from the shadows was no longer an option. It was the only way to begin healing, no matter how treacherous the journey ahead. And so, with my heart pounding a rhythmic salute to the truth and my mind fiercely grappling with the cost of my past, I made the irrevocable decision. It was time to face the relentless tide of retribution, come what may. Crossing forbidden borders, into enemy territory, the weight of my past still clung to me like a second skin as I stepped away from the shelter of the forest's familiar embrace. The path ahead was treacherous, a narrow, winding trail that marked the invisible boundary between my refuge and the dreaded territory of the pack. Every step I took was laden with the silent promise of reckoning. The night was crisp, and the air carried a biting chill that mingled with the musky scent of wolf territory, a pungent reminder of the lives that roamed this land in perpetual vigilance. The boundary was not just a line etched on the ground. It was a challenge, a gauntlet thrown by fate itself. With each measured stride, the ground beneath my boots whispered secrets of ancient rivalries and long-held grudges. The fallen leaves crunched softly underfoot, punctuating the heavy silence. I could feel the pulse of the earth as if it were attuned to my racing heartbeat, echoing the quiet desperation that had driven me to this forbidden crossing. As I advanced, the trees grew sparser, their gnarled branches parting to reveal a vast, open clearing bathed in the unyielding light of a full moon. The moon's glow was both haunting and beautiful, a silver beacon against the velvet darkness. Here, the air was tinged with a raw, untamed essence, a mixture of cold night mist, damp moss, and the underlying scent of territorial musk that confirmed I was no longer in a place of safety. With every inhalation, the atmosphere seemed to etch itself into my memory, as if the forest was marking me with its ancient, silent verdict. My mind swirled with conflicting thoughts as I pressed forward. The clear demarcation of enemy territory both beckoned and warned. On one hand, the estate looming in the distance, its imposing ivy-clad walls, the faint glimmer of torches along its periphery, hinted at a world of secrets waiting to be unveiled. On the other, it represented the stronghold of those who deemed me a traitor, a ghost from a painful past. I could almost feel their eyes upon me, even in their physical absence, and the risk with every step was palpable. Each stride forward felt like stepping on a thin sheet of ice over a chasm of retribution. The night whispered its own promises of discovery and doom. Every step whispered a promise of reckoning, I thought, as I crossed an area where the boundary blurred between the known and the unknown. The rustling of the wind, the soft murmur of leaves shifting in harmony with the night, created a symphony of eerie beauty. It was as if the very world was watching, waiting for me to falter or forge ahead despite the looming threat. I realized that in this moment, the cool night air was not merely a backdrop. It was an active participant in my journey, a silent herald of the dangers that lay beyond. Internally, my resolve began to solidify amid the blend of fear and determination. The past may have labeled me a traitor, but here, stepping into enemy territory, I could reclaim my power by facing what awaited me with unyielding bravery. I allowed my thoughts to settle like dust stirred by a midnight storm. Every nerve, every sinew in my body focused on the journey ahead, rejecting the urge to retreat into the shadows I had so long known. There was a fierce clarity in that resolve, a recognition that the consequences of my past could only be mended by confronting them head-on. The higher ground of the trail offered a brief respite, a momentary pause where I could survey the enemy land stretching out before me. The estate, with its sprawling silhouette set against the vast night sky, seemed almost otherworldly. Its sturdy stone walls, cloaked in the subtle glow of moonlight, exuded a sense of both majesty and menace. It was a fortress built not just of stone but of legacy, honor, and unspoken oaths. Even from afar, one could discern the ripple of tension that emanated from within. It was a place where every corridor held memories of battles fought and loyalties questioned. I felt an almost magnetic pull toward that formidable edifice, as if it held the answers to questions I had long tried to bury. It beckoned me with the promise of confrontation, of finally facing the truths behind my exile. With every tentative step, the risk escalated. Each footfall was a defiant declaration that I would not cower in the sanctuary of what was once my past. Instead, I would walk boldly toward the very heart of the storm, in that delicate balance between awe and apprehension. The boundary I crossed became more than a mere physical demarcation. It transformed into a metaphor for my inner journey. The risk was immense, and yet with each forward push, the whispered echoes of the past began to fade into background noise, replaced by the resounding cadence of a newfound resolve. My journey into this enemy territory was not just a physical traverse, but a deliberate stepping into the light of accountability, a decision to no longer run from the shadows of what I once was. As I continued onward, the cool night air seemed to thicken with anticipation. The scent of pine, the vibrant musk of territorial animals, and the understated sound of a distant stream intertwined to form a sensory tapestry that pulled me further, from the safety of oblivion and into the realm of reckoning. With every step, I embraced the full weight of what it meant to be both the hunted and, paradoxically, the one who would soon challenge destiny. I had crossed the forbidden borders, and there was no turning back now. The gauntlet of judgment, approaching Moonfang's fortress. As the path meandered toward its final destination, the imposing silhouette of Moonfang's fortress emerged beneath a luminous full moon, its grandeur both awe-inspiring and foreboding. The estate rose before me like an ancient citadel, an edifice carved from time itself, its walls echoing with stories of honor, betrayal, and the bitter aftermath of shattered bonds. Every step toward this monumental structure felt as if I were advancing under the judgmental gaze of countless unseen eyes, each expecting me to crumble under the weight of my past. The grandeur of the fortress presented a stark contrast to the cruel reality I carried with me. Ornate stone arches and intricately carved wood panels spoke of wealth, tradition, and an unyielding legacy. Yet the air around it pulsed with hostility. As I approached the grand hall, the world seemed to narrow into a single point of focus, an overwhelming mix of admiration for its beauty and a rising dread of the whispered condemnations that awaited me inside. Every whispered word, every subtle glance thrown in my direction, cut deep like a dagger meant to remind me of everything I had lost. Upon entering the great hall, my senses were assaulted by the abrupt shift in atmosphere. The space was vast and opulent. A cavernous room bathed in the soft glow of moonlight filtered through stained glass windows, its grandeur softened only by the tension that lurked in every corner. Wolves and other members of the pack congregated in tight clusters, their expressions carved from stone and eyes glimmering with a mix of suspicion and disdain. The murmurs, soft at first, built into a chorus of covert accusations and bitter memories. Traitor, deserter, abandoned. Each name floated in the charged air like a curse. I could feel the power dynamics shift palpably as I moved deeper into the hall. The air was dense with unspoken mistrust, and every step felt like it brought with it the silent judgment of 1,000 voiceless reproaches. Each face I passed bore the imprint of regret and sorrow, reminders that the bonds I once thought unbreakable had been ravaged by my choices. The lavish decorations and meticulous details of the hall, symbols of a storied past and boundless pride, clashed violently with the harsh reality of rejection that now stung with every step I took. A few moments of silence stretched between my pounding thoughts and the cacophony of judging whispers. I recalled the times when I once belonged to this very pack, a time when trust was given freely, and every look, every kind word, was a bond that transcended rivalry. Now, those same faces carried an icy resolve, their eyes narrowed with calculated disdain. Each whispered word was like a fresh scar, each sidelong glance an indictment. I could almost hear the echoing sound of traitor resonating through the marble corridors, its intensity magnified by the raw, pulsating energy of the hall. The closer I drew to the center, the more vivid the interplay between opulence and judgment became. Ornate columns rose like silent sentinels, their surfaces reflecting the muted glow of chandeliers, while soft, intricate tapestries told tales of ancient honor now tarnished by the relentless march of betrayal. Amidst this display of splendor, the discordant notes of hostility shattered the illusion of sanctuary. It was a gauntlet, an inescapable trial that I was forced to walk, a symbolic passage laden with both splendor and the crushing certainty of isolation. With every step toward the heart of the fortress, my resolve wavered between a desire for redemption and the piercing sting of rejection. The anticipation of what lay ahead mingled with the heavy, unyielding pressure of past mistakes. I could feel my pulse quicken as the murmur of voices swelled, a tidal wave of anger and doubt that threatened to sweep away any remnant of the person I once was. Yet, in the midst of that turbulent surge, a quiet, persistent determination took hold. I realized that despite the gauntlet laid before me, this was also an opportunity, a moment to confront the ghosts of my past, to face the very judgments that had haunted every step I had taken. It was as if the fortress itself exhaled a silent challenge, to stand firm in the face of overwhelming judgment, to assert my right to belong despite being branded as an outcast. In that charged atmosphere, the dazzling beauty of the hall acted as both a beacon and a battlefield. The soft luminescence of moonlight that spilled across the polished floors and gilded details reminded me that even in the midst of judgment, there could be moments of unexpected beauty, fleeting yet powerful instants that defied the weight of legacy. I moved slowly, deliberately, letting every step echo a silent vow to myself. I would not let the whispers and wary glances define me. The grand hall, with all its hidden reproaches, became a stage on which the final act of my past would be played out, a performance where I chose to stand tall, even if each gaze carried the sting of betrayal. With a heart both heavy and resolute, I stepped further into the fortress, knowing that every moment in this sacred yet condemned space was a battleground where my very soul would be laid bare. In that incandescent blend of beauty and cruelty, I understood that the journey here was not just about facing those who scorned me. It was a test of my own inner strength, a gauntlet of judgment that would decide if I could ever reclaim the honor I once thought lost forever. And so, amidst the murmur of disapproval and the cold radiance of Moonfang's legacy, I pressed on, determined to prove that even a traitor might find a way to rise anew. Faces of the pack, trials of trust and reproof. As I stepped further into the heart of Moonfang's fortress, the charged atmosphere shifted subtly. The murmurs of disapproval gave way to the unmistakable presence of the pack's key figures, each one a living testament to both the beauty and brutality of loyalty. In the midst of this silent tribunal, I caught my first glimpse of Caleb, his piercing gaze steady and unyielding, as if he were weighing every fragment of my soul. Alongside him stood Arya, her expression a blend of cold resolve and unspoken sorrow. And off to one side, Marcus lingered, a silent enigma whose inscrutable eyes seemed to harbor a storm of conflicting emotions. "Evelyn," Caleb intoned, his voice firm yet laden with the weight of past bonds broken and trust betrayed. "We expected you would not dare return here unannounced." His words struck me like icy daggers, each syllable a reminder of the hurt my betrayal had inflicted on those who once embraced me. I could almost see the pack's collective memory in his eyes, a tapestry of shared history stained by the betrayal that now defined me. Arya's gaze, sharp and unflinching, cut through the quiet like a scythe. "You carry secrets," she said, slowly, her tone neither fully hostile nor kind. "Secrets that could jeopardize everything we hold dear." Her words hung heavily in the air, as I struggled to reconcile the woman I once was with the traitor I had become in their eyes. In that moment, every whispered accusation and shattered promise reverberated within me, fueling a maelstrom of remorse and defiance. Marcus, ever the silent adjudicator, shifted his stance as if preparing to interject. His eyes, dark pools of silent judgment, told stories of battles fought both on the field and within the chambers of the heart. "Trust is earned, not claimed," he murmured, the words carrying a quiet authority that left little room for negotiation. It was as if his very presence embodied the painful lessons of loyalty lost and the fragile hope of redemption. Amid this sea of scrutinizing faces, my internal struggle roared, conflicted emotions clashing within me as fiercely as any physical battle. I could feel the relentless pull of guilt intermingled with a stubborn, defiant spark that insisted I deserved another chance. In the midst of these trials of trust and reproof, I sensed another presence. Damon, the embodiment of caution, impossibility. He lingered at the periphery, his eyes locked on mine, conveying both a warning and an unspoken invitation to believe in change. The tension between us crackled like static. His gaze, firm yet unexpectedly gentle, hinted at the possibility of understanding amidst the storm of suspicion. "You think you can waltz back without consequence?" he said in a low, measured tone when our eyes finally met, his words almost conversational in their subtle defiance. Yet even as his tone carried a trace of warmth, his stance remained guarded, a reminder that trust, once shattered, was not easily mended. It was in these charged moments that dialogue and silence danced in unison. Caleb's voice, stern and commanding, broke through the tension. "Your return is not a simple homecoming, Evelyn. It is a challenge to the very fabric of our unity. What do you have to say for yourself?" His question, though directed at me, resonated with the collective doubt that filled the hall. For a heartbeat, the silence that followed was deafening. My mind raced to find words that could bridge the chasm between remorse and resolve, between the fierce loyalty of those present and the painful solitude of my past. I cannot rewrite the mistakes I've made, I finally managed, my voice trembling with a mix of vulnerability and determination. But I am here to ensure that the secrets of yesterday do not damn us all tomorrow. Every syllable was an earnest plea for understanding, a fragile thread of hope spun from the depths of regret. Arya's eyes softened imperceptibly, a momentary lapse in her unyielding guard, before hardening once more. "Promises are easy, Evelyn. It is actions that determine loyalty," she declared, her tone slicing through the fragile calm with renewed certainty. The weight of her words was palpable, each one a measured indictment of my past transgressions and an unspoken demand for proof of my resolve. Through the murmurs and measured silence of the assembled pack, I could sense the divergent paths before me, one of retribution for the betrayals of old, and another, perhaps even more daunting, of redemption through undeniable action. Marcus's quiet interjection reinforced the gravity of the moment. "Actions hereafter will define the trust we choose to bestow upon you." His calm certainty underscored the unspoken truth that in the eyes of Moonfang, words were not enough to heal wounds etched deep by betrayal. As the gravity of each piercing gaze pressed upon me, I found myself locked in a silent duel of wills, not only against those who had once been my family, but also within my own conflicted heart. Damon's steady presence urged me to step forward, to rise above the bitter chorus of suspicion. His quiet reminder, a subtle shift in his eyes toward mine, spoke of the possibility that even amidst the harshest judgment, there might be a glimmer of hope for those willing to fight for it. In that hushed moment of internal reckoning and external scrutiny, I understood that the road to redemption was strewn with challenges that extended far beyond the confines of this grand hall. The pack's faces, etched with pain, hope, and unyielding determination, were both my judges and my potential saviors. And as I stood before them, my heart pounding in time with the unspoken pulse of the room, I silently vowed to prove that the person I was now could, in time, mend the rift of betrayal and earn the trust I had once lost. Under supervision, the cold order and defiant heart, the heavy silence that followed the pack's verdict fell like a shroud over the grand hall. In that oppressive stillness, Caleb's voice rang out with unmistakable finality. "Under supervision, Evelyn. You will remain here until we verify your claims." Each word landed with a weight that pushed against every fiber of my being, a command not merely of orders, but of searing judgment. The words were cold and unyielding, a decree meant to remind me of my past transgressions. A short pause, a heartbeat. Then the command echoed again in my mind, a stark refrain that demanded submission. Yet beneath that crushing weight, a spark flickered, an inner defiance that refused to be quenched. I met each accusing gaze with a determined glint in my eyes, even as the pack gathered around me, each face a mix of suspicion and longing for redemption. I could almost feel the chill of authority as it seeped into my bones. They expected me to cower, to shrink into the shadows where I had spent so many lonely nights. But deep within, a fierce ember of survival burned. I was not the creature who merely ran from danger. I was a fighter, and even if branded a traitor, I would reclaim my honor. My mind raced in staccato beats, echoing the harsh orders: stay, obey, prove. Each command resounded like a tick of a clock, counting down my fate. Yet, interwoven with these sharp reminders, was a steady, defiant rhythm that whispered, "Not all is lost." I could feel that push-pull, the relentless tug between the need to obey for survival and the burning desire to fight for my redemption. In the dim light of the hall, as pack members drifted like shadows around me, I found myself drawing strength from the very isolation that now defined my existence. The judgment in their eyes burned, every sidelong glance, every whispered word. But with that seething hostility came a challenge I could not ignore. It was as if every hostile murmur was a gauntlet laid at my feet, daring me to prove that I still had worth, that I could not only survive but rise to reclaim my place. Damon lingered near the threshold, his gaze both stern and oddly protective. His silent presence served as a counterbalance to the cold order imposed upon me, a reminder that even within the group of the unforgiving, there existed a spark of possibility. His eyes, dark and steady, held a hint of something unspoken. Caution. Yes, but also a reluctant admiration for my resolve. The tension between us was palpable, a delicate thread weaving through the stern commands of authority and the wild pulse of defiance in my heart. I was not one to simply obey. I would not let the weight of judgment crush my spirit. Every fiber of my being rebelled against the idea of confinement, the notion that my past should chain me to a fate of endless reproach. As I stood there, each word of the order echoed like a challenge to the very core of who I had become. A surge of determination bubbled within me, tempered by the knowledge that survival sometimes required bending the rules. Even as my heart whispered that it was time to rise, I took a deep, steadying breath, filling my lungs with the cool, charged air of the hall. In that moment, the command transformed in my mind from a sentence of exile into a gauntlet thrown by fate. I resolved that I would use this enforced waiting, this cold supervision, as the crucible in which my redemption would be forged. Every minute spent under their unyielding watch would be a testament to my resolve, a challenge I would meet not with submission, but with the relentless force of a heart determined to reclaim its honor. The pack watched, their faces etched with a complex tapestry of disdain and hope. Their mistrust was as palpable as the chill that clung to the stone floors beneath my feet. Yet even amid such profound suspicion, there existed a subtle, almost imperceptible current of possibility, a belief that maybe, just maybe, I could prove my worth if I dared to step into the light of accountability. Damon's presence was a quiet reassurance in this storm of orders and admonishment. His protective stance, the way his gaze never wavered from mine, offered a glimmer of understanding, an unspoken promise that even here, in the grip of judgment, I was not utterly forsaken. His eyes conveyed a complexity of emotions, responsibility, caution, and a daring hope that we could, together, forge something new out of the wreckage of past betrayals. As I listened to the echo of the cold order, my inner voice rose above the cacophony of doubt and anger. I vowed silently, with every breath, that I would not let the scars of my past dictate the course of my future. I would embrace the challenge, not as an act of submission, but as a bold declaration that I was ready to fight, not merely for survival, but for the redemption and honor that I believed lay within reach. In that moment of determined solitude, Amidst whispers of command and the heavy, watchful eyes of those gathered, my defiant heart resolved to stand tall. The cold order was a challenge, and I was ready to answer it. I would transform this imposed supervision into a proving ground, a stage upon which I would silently and fiercely reclaim my place among those I once called family. Sanctuary of Shadows. Banter in Damon's quarters. Leaving behind the oppressive judgments of the pack, I found solace in the quiet confines of Damon's quarters, a space as meticulously ordered as it was unexpectedly intimate. The room was cool and minimalistic, its clean, polished surfaces standing in stark contrast to the heated chaos I had just endured. Yet, amid the austerity, there was an unmistakable warmth that began to seep into the corners, an energy sparked by Damon's presence. I dropped my bag on a small, worn sofa with a careless grace that belied the storm inside me, and Damon's eyes followed my every move. He leaned against the doorway with the same guarded expression that had punctuated our earlier interactions, yet there was something softer in his gaze now, a gentle curiosity mixed with a hint of amusement. "So, you've braved the gauntlet? Huh?" he said dryly, his tone low and teasing. I arched an eyebrow, a wry smile tugging at the corners of my lips. Braved it? More like I stumbled through it with all the elegance of a wounded fox. My remark hung in the still air, and for a moment, the tension between us dissipated into a charged silence where our shared laughter and mutual understanding felt almost palpable. Damon pushed off from the doorway and walked over with measured steps that echoed off the cool stone walls. The soft hum of the air conditioner and the faint scent of pine mingled in the room, a quiet counterpoint to the heated banter swirling between us. "Wounded foxes, huh?" he retorted, a playful glint lighting up his intense amber eyes. "I'd say you're more like a wild cat with claws bared, ready to pounce despite a few scratches." I let out a short laugh, the sound both light and edged with vulnerability. "Perhaps. I never claimed to be subtle, but tell me, Damon, do you always greet your guests with such biting wit, or is it reserved just for traitors turned survivors?" My words were half teasing, half probing, as if daring him to reveal more about himself behind that stoic mask. His smile was slow to form, and when it did, it carried an uncharacteristic warmth that belied his usual reserve. "Maybe I'm just drawn to those who refuse to hide, even when the odds are stacked against them." He reached out briefly, almost imperceptibly, as if testing the limits of the space between us. His hand brushed against mine, and for a fleeting second, the chill of the room contrasted sharply with the heat of our proximity. Every detail of the room, the neat alignment of furniture, the muted lighting, and even the crisp, cold texture of the wooden floor beneath our feet, served as a silent witness to our exchange. Yet within this strict order, there blossomed a spontaneous, vibrant dialogue. Damon's sarcasm and my wit danced together in a rhythm that was both familiar and daringly new. I shifted my weight, leaning back against a sturdy bookshelf lined with relics of the pack's legacy. "You know," I began, my voice softening into a reflective cadence, "sometimes I wonder if this order is meant to protect us or to imprison us further in our own past mistakes." There was a hint of bitterness in my tone, a confession of inner conflict that I couldn't entirely mask with humor. Damon's expression shifted, the playful glimmer in his eyes deepening into something more earnest. "Protection and imprisonment are two sides of the same coin," he murmured thoughtfully. "Maybe it's the chaos outside these walls that forces us to cling to structure. But Evelyn, you have a fire inside you that can't be tamed by rules or order." His words, sincere and unguarded, sent a ripple of both reassurance and challenge through me. For a moment, the air between us felt charged with the weight of unspoken promises and shared regrets. I inhaled deeply, letting the coolness of the room fill me as I considered his words. There was truth in them, an acknowledgement of the broken past, and a tentative hope that perhaps, through defiance and perseverance, redemption was possible. "Maybe I'm not looking for permission," I replied quietly, the sound of my voice mingling with the soft hum of the space. "Maybe I'm here to prove that even a defiant heart can find a way to mend." Our banter wove through the quiet of Damon's quarters like a gentle current, sometimes light and teasing, other times raw with emotion. Each exchange was punctuated by the small gestures that spoke louder than any fervent declaration, a lingering glance, the briefest touch of his hand against my arm, or the subtle tilt of his head as if he were measuring the truth in my eyes. In that moment, surrounded by the cool order of the room, yet warmed by our shared vulnerability, I sensed that the true battle was not only with the ghosts of my past, but with my own fear of falling, of allowing myself to trust again. Damon's presence offered a promise, not of certainty, but of possibility. A possibility that through our banter and our barbs, we could carve out a space where judgment gave way to understanding, where the scars of yesterday could forge the strength of tomorrow. As the evening deepened, our conversation meandered between humor and heartache, each word a step in a delicate dance of wits and emotions. The stark setting of Damon's quarters, with its cool surfaces and ordered lines, became a sanctuary of sorts, an unexpected haven where defiant hearts could exchange truths in whispers and laughter. And amidst that gentle glow, I felt a small, undeniable hope taking root, a hope that perhaps, within the labyrinth of our shared battles and quiet moments, we might both discover a way to heal. Tactical grounds, strategy and the weight of doubt. Under the pre-dawn gloom, the training grounds transformed into a field of calculated risk and silent determination. The cool air was thick with anticipation as I gathered with the pack's tactical leaders. In the faint light, the sprawling map spread out on the makeshift table became our battlefield, a canvas upon which strategies were to be drawn, and the future of Moonfang's survival was to be decided. "Listen," I began, my voice steady despite the weight pressing upon me. I pointed to a cluster of marks scattered across the map. "These points represent recent attacks by the rogues. They're not random. They're a deliberate pattern, a maneuver to test our defenses and exploit our vulnerabilities." Each marker, dark against the parchment, was as sharp as a blade slicing through darkness, and I knew that every misstep in our strategy could be fatal. The room fell into a reflective hush as Caleb leaned forward, his eyes narrowing with a mixture of skepticism and urgency. "What are you suggesting?" he asked in a tone that balanced command with cautious inquiry. His voice carried the weight of expectations, a burden shared by every soul present. I could almost see the ripple of doubt cross his face as I continued. "They're adapting. Their strikes are calculated to drain our reserves and fragment our unity. We must double our patrols in the north and reassign scouts to disrupt their communication lines." As I laid out the tactical details, each word was measured like a soldier's step on a perilous path. My hands moved over the map, drawing invisible lines of order amid chaos. I compared the rogues' tactics to a chess game played in shadows. Each move, each counterstrike unfolding with deliberate precision. "Imagine our defenses as a fortress," I explained. "Every weak point is a chink in our armor. If we let them concentrate their force, it's not just our territory they risk, it's our very legacy that will crumble." The plan resonated, with the somber intensity of a final charge. But even as I spoke, the internal pressure, the crushing burden of my past actions and their consequences, weighed upon me like an anchor. I remembered the nights spent running, every regret a chain linking me to the mistakes I now had to answer for. It was in that pressure that the stakes became painfully clear. The organized threat of the rogues was not merely an external danger, but a mirror reflecting the cost of every betrayal, every decision that had led me to this moment. Marcus, whose silence had been as compelling as any spoken word, finally broke his contemplation. "Your plan is as sharp as a blade, Evelyn," he said slowly, his tone evenly measured yet carrying an unmistakable undercurrent of doubt. But even a blade, if mishandled, can turn on its wielder. His words cut through the tension, reminding everyone present that brilliance was only as potent as the resolve behind it. The metaphor hung in the air, a reminder that every strategy had its price. I met his gaze squarely, feeling the flash of remorse and determination mingle within me. "I understand," I replied softly, "and I carry the cost of my past with every step I take. But if we do nothing, we risk not just our battleground, but our very future. The rogues are relentless, and their unity of purpose gives them strength. We must match that with every resource at our disposal." The resolve in my voice was palpable, a fusion of strategic acumen and heartfelt desperation, born from years of internal conflict. Across the table, Arya's eyes flickered with a guarded intensity as she absorbed my analysis. "We must be adaptive," she stated firmly, her words clear and precise like a well-practiced command. "Our strength lies in our ability to predict their moves and counter them before they strike." Her logical insistence served as both a validation of my plan and a poignant reminder of the fragile hope that bound us together as a pack. The conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by pauses that allowed the weight of our collective doubts and hopes to settle. Each member contributed in measured tones, the interplay of ideas, strategies, and memories, weaving a tapestry that was as much about tactical brilliance as it was about redemption from the scars of the past. In those quiet interludes, I could feel the persistent undercurrent of resolve strengthening among us. We were not merely preparing for battle, but forging a new future from the fragments of our shared history. As the meeting drew to a close, I glanced around the room and caught Damon's steady gaze across the cluttered table. His eyes, always so full of guarded possibility, now shone with a subtle intensity that spoke of unsaid promises, of battles yet to be fought together. In that fleeting moment, our silent exchange carried the unspoken understanding that despite the weight of our doubts and the high stakes of the coming confrontation, there was a path forward, illuminated by hope and the resolve to rise above our past errors. With that, I folded the map, each crease a testament to the hard choices that lay ahead. I could feel the calm determination of the room, a fragile yet potent force ready to confront the looming storm of the rogues. My mind, echoing with the strategy laid out and the cost of my own inner turmoil, settled into a moment of quiet resolve. In the sharp contrast of strategy and the weight of doubt, our plan was clear, and every breath I took now carried with it a promise to honor our shared legacy and to face the challenge head-on, no matter the personal cost. Echoes of battle. When fate and fury collide, the night exploded into chaos without warning. In a split second, the tranquil murmur of the forest was shattered by savage roars and the clamor of clashing steel. Claws flashed, dagger struck. A roar echoed. The rogues had ambushed us. I barely had time to react. My heart pounded as I plunged into the fray, every instinct forcing me to fight. Damon was there, his eyes ablaze with intensity. Side by side, we became a blur of movement, an unyielding force fueled by determination and survival. I ducked. A rogue's claws sliced the air where my head had been. Damon's sword arced through the night, cleaving a path through the overwhelming odds. His presence was a steadfast anchor in the swirling chaos. Every step became a life-or-death dance. I lunged forward with my dagger, feeling the cold steel meet resistance as I struck down a foe. Claws raked past me. I stumbled back, my breath caught in a brief, painful gasp. Around me, the clamor of battle roared like a tempest. Every moment was punctuated by rapid-fire action. Limbs flailing, boots pounding on the soft ground, and the guttural growls of enemies threatening to overwhelm us. For a moment, in the midst of the high-octane carnage, time slowed. My mind raced, reflecting on the sheer magnitude of what was happening. The adrenaline surged through my veins like wildfire. I could feel every near miss, the whisper of a rogue's snarl as he narrowly missed my side, the sting of shrapnel-like impacts when blows landed dangerously close. Damon's hand brushed briefly against mine as we parried an attack, an electric touch that sent a jolt of mutual reliance straight to my core. That touch was a silent promise. We were in this together, no matter the odds. The battle raged on, relentlessly. Claws flashed, daggers slashed. I dove behind a fallen log for a heartbeat's respite, my pulse thundering in my ears. Every collision of metal and skin reverberated like an unyielding drum, each beat a reminder of our struggle for survival. The rogues pressed in from all sides, their numbers seeming endless amid the shimmering chaos. I felt the cold, brutal tang of fear, but also a fierce determination burning within me. I rose quickly, not to escape, but to counter the mounting tide of enemies. With Damon right at my side, we moved as a single unit, a fluid, synchronized motion of survival that defied the confusion and violence surrounding us. I launched an assault, my dagger slashing with precision. Damon's steely resolve turned each swing of his sword into a promise of protection. Together, we carved out a narrow corridor through the relentless onslaught. "Keep your guard up, Evelyn!" Damon barked over the clatter of battle, his voice a sharp command that intertwined with the roar of combat. His words were both an order and a lifeline, urging me to focus through the maelstrom. I answered with a defiant cry, letting my determination echo above the fear. In that moment, every cut, every parry, and every desperate gasp for air crystallized into a singular focus: survival, and a reclaiming of the honor I had thought lost. Between the staccato, bursts of action, claw, slash, thud, and the quieter, reflective pauses that allowed me to gather my thoughts, I felt the battle etch itself into my very being. I could taste the metallic tang of blood and sweat. I could smell the raw earth disturbed by our struggle, mingled with the acrid scent of fear. The physical danger was palpable, but so was the emotional intensity. Every brutal confrontation was a reckoning with my past. Every swing of my blade a defiant strike against the memories of betrayal that haunted me. As the confrontation continued, the tide of the battle seemed to shift imperceptibly. The rogues' furious assaults began to falter under our relentless counterattacks. Damon and I exchanged brief, meaningful glances, silent affirmations of mutual trust amid the encroaching threat. His determined expression spurred me on, and I found strength. In that shared moment, together, our synchronized attack started to thin the enemy ranks, our combined force a stark testament to what can be achieved when two resilient hearts fight as one. Still, the battle was far from over. Each enemy felled only seemed to invite more. The night continued to echo with the sounds of struggle, and the sheer intensity of the clash deepened the bond between Damon and me. Our synchronized movement, honed by necessity and fueled by mutual reliance, carved hope out of despair. Every scar inflicted tonight was a reminder of the cost of our past and the price of our redemption. Yet it was also the birth pang of a new, unbreakable unity. In the blur of relentless combat, I experienced a moment of profound clarity. Within the chaos, I was not alone. The fury of battle, the collision of fate and might, was rewriting the narrative of my life. It was a chaotic testament to the idea that when doom threatens, courage and trust can be the only weapons strong enough to defy it. And as the echoes of battle surged around us, so did the burgeoning realization that this fight was not only about survival, it was about reclaiming our very souls, one fierce, relentless moment at a time. Clash of Titans, the showdown with Darius. The atmosphere crackled with raw energy as the roar of battle waned into an eerie stillness. In that charged pause, the towering figure of Darius emerged from the darkness, an embodiment of betrayal, and vengeance. His eyes burned with a cold fury that pierced through the tumult, and for a fleeting heartbeat, everything around us seemed to hold its breath. Darius, the mastermind behind the treacherous downfall that had scarred the pack, stood before me as both a specter from my past and the looming threat to our future. Without a word, he advanced, each step deliberate and laden with menace. Our gazes locked, and time itself appeared to distort. In that moment, I felt the full weight of my former transgressions, and the burning desire for redemption surge through my veins. My resolve, once forged in personal anguish, now burned with the promise of safeguarding the pack's future. The air vibrated with tension as Darius swung a heavy, jagged blade, its arc slicing through the dim light, a signal that fate and fury were about to collide in a maelstrom of steel and determination. Claws flashed. Steel clashed against steel. I dodged a savage blow, feeling the near miss send a burst of cold adrenaline through my body. The rapid cadence of each impact, the staccato rhythm of clashing metal and guttural roars, propelled me forward with an intensity that eclipsed all fear. Every maneuver was a test, every counterstrike a declaration that I was no longer defined solely by my past failures. I met Darius's brutal onslaught with a fierce determination, my dagger a luminous extension of my will, striking with precision that belied the chaos around us. In that fleeting heartbeat between blows, the world narrowed to the ferocity of our duel. His strength was overwhelming, his blows measured and relentless. Yet I countered with the defiant hope of someone fighting for not just personal survival, but for the honor of the pack. "This ends now," I hissed as I parried another vicious strike. The words tore through the clamor, reverberating in the charged silence that followed each swing. My muscles burned with exertion as I moved, each step a blend of instinct and calculated risk, a dance on the razor's edge between life and oblivion. The confrontation grew more brutal with every passing moment. Darius's ferocity, sharpened by years of unyielding malice, clashed against my transformed resolve. The rhythmic pounding of our hearts echoed in time with the falling blows. I could taste the metallic tang of blood on my tongue and feel the raw, unyielding force of each impact as my defensive stance began to harden into a clear purpose. In one decisive exchange, our blades met with such force it was as if lightning had struck the battleground. For that suspended instant, time halted. In that fleeting heartbeat, everything changed. Every lingering regret and all the pain of betrayal converged, fueling my determination to fight, not just to survive, but to forge a future where trust could be rebuilt and honor reclaimed. As the clash raged on, the battlefield transformed into a maelstrom of relentless action and soaring emotion. The air vibrated with the echo of our blows while the ground beneath us was stained with the residue of our struggle. I could feel every near miss, every searing burn of each contact. Each scar and every bruise became a symbol of my unbreakable resolve. Darius's strikes, though powerful, began to falter under the steady onslaught of my newfound strength. Strength born of both hardship and hope. Between bursts of ferocity, our battle revealed quiet moments of raw introspection. As I blocked another of his furious attacks, I caught a glimpse of the man I had once been, a figure lost in regret, and the warrior I had become. Every swing of my dagger was a cathartic release of accumulated sorrow, every parry a step toward redemption. I realized then that this brutal contest was more than a fight for survival. It was a crucible in which the fragments of my past would be reshaped into the promise of a united future with the pack. Damon's presence echoed in the periphery, a silent reminder of the bonds I had forged and the trust we shared. His unyielding loyalty lent me an invisible strength, bolstering my resolve to stand firm against the tides of betrayal. With every clash of claw and steel, the emotional stakes rose, the future of our pack, the honor of those we once called family, and my own battered soul hung in the balance. Finally, as our furious duel reached its zenith, A decisive blow broke through the relentless barrage. With a surge of courage and precision, I pivoted, channeling every ounce of resolve into one final strike. The sound of the blade meeting its mark resonated like a clarion call in the tumult, a violent yet cathartic punctuation to the battle's crescendo. Darius staggered, his eyes widening in a mix of shock and fury. In that moment, I felt the convergence of my past and future, a collision of betrayal and redemption that defined who I was meant to be. The battlefield, pulsating with the raw energy of our showdown, bore witness to the transformation of a traitor into a warrior willing to stake everything on hope, unity, and the promise of a new dawn for the pack. As Darius fell, his dark ambition shattered at the feet of our collective strength, I knew that the fight was not truly over. Yet, with that brutal, decisive moment, I had taken the first irrevocable step toward reclaiming my destiny, a destiny intertwined with the survival and honor of those who had once looked upon me with scorn, but who might now see in me a glimmer of the hero I was determined to become. Aftermath and acceptance. A new dawn for Moonfang. The clash of battle slowly faded, leaving behind a silence that was both somber and strangely gentle. In the immediate aftermath, the battlefield, once alive with the roar of combat, lay, scattered with the debris of conflict and the tangible remnants of survival. I could taste the metallic tang of blood still lingering on my lips, each breath flavored with the bitter essence of our struggle. Yet, amid the freshly inflicted wounds and deep-seated exhaustion, a quiet sense of victory began to take root. I moved through the aftermath like a wounded dancer, each step measured and reluctant, yet filled with a newfound purpose. The once frantic rhythm of battle had given way to a slower, reflective cadence, a breathing space where time seemed to pause, and every heartbeat carried a heavy promise of renewal. My arms ached from the unrelenting grip on weapons, and cuts and bruises told silent stories of near misses and close calls. The cool air, laced with the earthy aroma of pine and the crispness of a new dawn, swept gently over my skin, offering a tender relief from the heat of combat. Caleb approached slowly, his piercing eyes softening just enough to reveal the admiration buried beneath layers of skepticism. "Evelyn," he said, voice steady, yet carrying a note of genuine respect. "You fought with a fury that reminded us all of what it means to protect this pack." His words were simple but heavy with meaning, resonating deeply in the quiet. Aftermath. Around us, others stepped forward as well. Arya's once implacable expression now bore a tinge of solemn acceptance, and Marcus offered a nod that spoke of hard-won approval. In that moment, the hostility that had once defined our interactions began to thaw, replaced by the faint glow of understanding. I could feel the emotional weight of the battle slowly lifting, replaced by the gentle warmth of connection. As I sat on the cold, scarred ground, I allowed myself to truly feel the exhaustion and relief intermingling within me. Every ache and every raw, exposed wound was a reminder of the price we had all paid, yet also a testament to our collective resilience. A shared sense of belonging began to seep into the spaces that had long been filled with solitary defiance. The echoes of clashing steel and savage roars were now replaced by soft murmurs of healing, a whispered promise that there was hope for redemption, even for someone as broken as I once was. Damon, whose unwavering presence had fueled so much of the battle's intensity, stepped closer, his expression a fusion of lingering concern and quiet pride. He gently brushed a stray lock of hair from my forehead and spoke in a hushed tone. "You did more than just survive tonight, Evelyn. You reminded us why we fight." His hand on my shoulder, firm yet surprisingly gentle, provided the kind of reassurance that no amount of words could convey. In that simple act, I felt the beginnings of a bridge spanning the gap between isolation and acceptance, a tender connection that promised more than just survival. The crisp scent of the pine forest mingled with the lingering aroma of the fierce battle, a reminder that nature, indifferent yet nurturing, always endures. As I looked around, The once chaotic grounds of conflict were now being gently reclaimed by the soft hues of dawn. The sky shifted from the deep navy of night to a pale, hopeful blue, washing away the dark stains of violence with the promise of a new day. Every broken piece of the battlefield, every patch of scorched earth and scattered remnants of struggle told a story of loss and resilience, a narrative we were only just beginning to rewrite. In hushed tones, the pack members gathered to share memories of the fight, stories that wove together the threads of regret, hope, and a commitment to forge ahead. Each recollection was like a balm to my wounded spirit, a reminder that every scar, however deep, could be a mark of redemption. The atmosphere was heavy with a shared understanding that the pain of the past did not have to dictate our future. Instead, it could become the foundation for rebuilding trust, piece by piece, between those who had once been divided by betrayal. I closed my eyes briefly, letting the soft caress of the morning breeze and the gentle murmur of voices envelop me. The taste of blood had already begun to fade, replaced by a hint of dew and fresh earth. A subtle yet powerful signal that even the most brutal nights gave way to renewal. In that quiet moment of reflection, I resolved that I would no longer allow my past to define me. I would use these wounds not as symbols of defeat, but as emblems of my determination to reclaim a future within the fold of the pack. The first rays of the sun crept over the horizon, casting a soft, golden glow that illuminated the once shadowed ground. In the flickering light, the scars of battle took on a different character, not merely marks of pain, but badges of honor, testaments to the strength it took to stand and fight. As Caleb and the others continued their cautious yet hopeful acknowledgments of my efforts, I felt the heavy chains of judgment slowly disintegrating. In their place emerged the tender bonds of forgiveness and acceptance. At that moment, I knew that the path to reintegration would not be easy, nor would it erase the memories of betrayal. But it was a beginning, a new dawn for Moonfang and for me. The promise of tomorrow shone brightly as the new day unfurled, inviting us all to heal, to rebuild, and most importantly, to trust in the possibility of a future crafted from the lessons of our shared past. A promise in the moonlight, love, belonging, and new beginnings. Under a sky brushed with twilight's fading blues and emerging purples, the night softened into something tender and full of quiet promise. In the gentle embrace of the moonlight, Damon and I found ourselves alone, away from the frenzied echoes of battle and the harsh scrutiny of the pack. Here, in the sanctuary of a secluded clearing near the estate, the world seemed to pause, offering us a rare, intimate moment to reclaim what had once been lost in the chaos. The silver glow of the crescent moon illuminated the space between us, casting our shadows side by side on the soft, dew-kissed grass. It was in that delicate light that Damon slowly reached into the folds of his worn jacket and withdrew a small, polished pendant, its surface etched with a crescent moon and symbols of ancient strength. The pendant, once held dear by my mother and passed down as a token of courage and belonging, shimmered in the moonlight as if it carried its own quiet promise. "Evelyn," Damon began, his voice low and uncharacteristically tender. "This belonged to someone who believed that our scars make us who we are. A reminder that even in darkness, there is a guiding light." His eyes, deep and earnest, searched mine for a heartbeat, as if weighing the sincerity of his unspoken vows. I could feel the steady rhythm of his pulse, a soft cadence that beat in harmony with the hope blooming within me. In that moment, the turbulent echoes of my past, the betrayals, the battles, the long nights of guilt, receded, replaced by the gentle certainty of our shared promise. My hand trembled slightly as I accepted the pendant from him. The cool metal slipped into my palm, its weight both physical and symbolic, a tangible piece of the future, forged from the fragments of a painful history. As our fingers brushed in the exchange, a warmth spread through me that was both unexpected and profoundly comforting. It was as if that single touch carried a silent message. despite everything, I belonged. I was not alone. And here, now, hope was within reach. "We'll wear our past like armor," I murmured softly, my voice a blend of quiet resolve and fragile optimism. Not to hide our scars, but to remind us how far we've come and what we're capable of building together. The words felt like a promise, both to myself and to him, a pledge that this new beginning was forged, not in the absence of pain, but in its very presence, transforming every loss into a lesson and every wound into a mark of resilience. Damon's smile was subtle yet profound, carrying a tender assurance that resonated in the shared silence. "As long as you keep this close," he said, his tone gentle as the whisper of the wind, "it will be a reminder that no matter the storms we weather, we have each other. Our bond, our loyalty, it's stronger than any past mistake." His words wrapped around me like a soft blanket on a cold night, their sincerity radiating with the silver glow of the crescent moon. In that hallowed space under the luminous sky, time itself seemed to slow. The soft rustle of leaves in the night air, the subtle, fragrant aroma of pine mingled with dew, and the distant, rhythmic chirp of crickets all played their part in composing a lullaby of renewal. Every sensory detail was heightened by the intimacy of the moment, a delicate tapestry woven from threads of tender vulnerability and quiet strength. For a while, we simply stood there, allowing the silence to speak in volumes. The pendant now, a precious emblem resting against my heart, pulsed in tandem with my own heartbeat. It was a silent promise, a commitment to persevere, to heal, and to forge a future that honored both the pain of our past and the possibilities of tomorrow. In those suspended seconds, I felt an overwhelming certainty that despite the battles fought and the scars carried, a new dawn was upon us. A dawn that beckoned with the gentle promise of redemption and unity. Yet, as the moon made its slow journey across the heavens, the night also whispered of new challenges on the horizon. Shadows danced at the edges of our secluded haven, hinting that the peace we so cherished might soon be tested by fresh trials. The air grew cooler, as if the world itself was preparing for another season of change, where love and loss would mingle once more, and the fragile bonds we were nurturing would be both our shield and our strength. "I know there's more ahead," I confessed softly, my voice carrying a hint of both hope and the weight of unseen battles. "But with you, and with all we've fought for, I believe we can face it together." Damon's eyes shone with a quiet determination as he squeezed my hand, sealing our unspoken pact. In that simple, profound gesture lay the promise of shared challenges, of deeper bonds yet to be forged, and of a future where every new dawn brought, with it, the possibility of healing and growth. Under the silver glow of the crescent moon, our promises and dreams intermingled with the night's gentle symphony. With hearts still beating in unison, we stepped forward into the new day, ready to face whatever might come together.